Okay, so now we come to the main bulk or main part of the course, Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz. An overview. This is just a basic overview. This is something that has been extremely powerful for me since doing this. I've just had so much more productivity. I had the idea to make this course. I've just got out of my own way, is the only way to say it. I've got bounds of energy. It's been life-changing. This is the missing piece. And what you have to have in this part of the course is an open mind. We've done a large part of this course has been about shame and the belief you're not good enough and how that manifests in our lives, how that's bled into your adulthood, and how childhood trauma may have affected you or not, and how complex trauma has kind of got into the system. This is taking things from a different perspective. So we know that the subconscious is almost like another world, another universe. We know that there are things we just don't really understand about the subconscious and how the mind fully works, but we're starting to put together a larger kind of meta view of this, and it's helping many people around the world. This system or internal family systems, which I'm going to give an overview of now, is it's extremely interesting, extremely empowering. So like I did this course in the order I've done, to understand shame first, to understand the inner critic. Now we are going to paint a picture with the different components of understanding this from not a mono mind paradigm. We're going to be looking at this from a multiple mind paradigm. So just a basic understanding of this will be very effective. You only need to understand one component of this, and then after, you can look into works and IFS therapy. Obviously, Richard Schwartz's book, IFS Internal Family, an introduction to internal family systems, is very good. No Bad Parts is also very good, and Greater Than the Sum of Our Parts. So then, obviously, if you're having therapy, if you're having counseling, or you're doing something else, all of these things will complement that. You'll see this from a different perspective. I had therapy for many years, and I didn't really find it that effective until I started to understand shame, and I started to understand IFS, and then it all became clear. It became extremely effective, in fact, and then the resulting effect of that is this course. So all parts of this course complement this theory. Let's get into it. What is IFS? We are made up of multiple parts, 4 ranges of multiple personalities. Don't mistake this with dissociative personality disorder or multiple personality disorder. Those that have DID or dissociative, it's now known as dissociative personality disorder, have an amnesic barrier between parts that are not too far from us, so they don't realize that when they are one part, that there's another part that actually they have inside. There's a barrier between them. This is a different paradigm to how most of us have thought about ourselves. However, this new paradigm presented here is extremely empowering. All your parts naturally have wonderful qualities and resources, all of which can be leveraged or used to help us thrive. So just as a side note, these parts in their natural state have qualities to them that are helpful. And then we're going to go into what happens to them for them to take over. So the issue is that these parts have been put through trauma or attachment injuries, which forced them out of their naturally valuable state and into roles which can be extreme. And they don't really want to do these roles. It's not what they were designed for. They just now use these roles to protect you, which we're going to go into. So these parts have been frozen in time. They still think that you are young and they have to protect you. They think that they are helping by constantly protecting, except they can be extremely damaging to our lives. Overthinking, self-doubt, addictions, procrastination, self-doubt, overthinking, like double thinking stuff, second thinking. You're constantly questioning yourself. You don't have a sense of identity because you have all of these parts questioning everything, and it Feels like the inner critic is you, but it's not necessarily you. It's a part of you. A lot of IFS work is helping the client to focus on them. So it's helping you to get to know them. Basically, it's get to know your inner critic and have it work for you, not against you. When you understand its motive, when you understand that, it becomes a lot easier. Instead of having, instead of shaming or fighting or trying, I've wrote that wrong, but instead of shaming or fighting, shaming to get rid of them, getting rid of these parts, which I think a lot of us do. We want to kill this part of us. We need to get curious with these parts and then begin to ask them certain questions, and you'll find this to be very effective. To most people's amazement, when asked to relax or when questions are asked of these parts, answers start coming. And it's so true, they do. Incredibly, when you learn the secret history of how or whatever part got forced into that role it's in, so you learn why it had to get to motivate you. And we go back to the shame slides, like why we have that inner critic, why we have that ideal self, why we have these parts, and it's all to protect you. And there was a time that these parts took on these roles, these burdens, as they're known in IFS language. The part may not like that role, but it still thinks it's absolutely necessary, or something tragic or catastrophic will happen. A good question to ask this part, or tension in the body, the location of the part, is what will happen if you didn't protect or do this role you are in? What would happen if you suddenly stopped criticizing me? And the answer will probably be, well, you'll fail, you won't do anything, you won't achieve anything, you won't amount to anything. And then you can understand where that's coming from, probably some kind of, that's the parent voice or the teacher's voice or somebody who ever said this to you when you were younger. You've taken on that role and it wants to protect you. It doesn't want you to be bad at things in case you get exposed to vulnerable part. So there's not too much difference between the idea of parts and the inner child or inner children theory. There's not much difference. It's the vulnerable part of you that these parts are protecting. Before they get forced into these roles, before they get hurt, they are usually playful, fun, creative, open, sensitive, and vulnerable. Whenever you look at children, you see how curious they are. They're just loving. They're open. They'll come up to you. They'll look at you. They just won't question. They have a lot of questions, and they just don't really have much fear. They have this very vulnerable, sensitive side, though. That's the point. And because they are so sensitive, they are the ones who get hurt the most. They get betrayed. They get the slings and arrows, the pains of growing up, the abandonment, the resentments, the neglect, the physical abuse, maybe the sexual abuse in many cases. These parts take on the burdens or extreme beliefs and emotions. They seem to enter your system from these experiences. Extreme beliefs and emotions blend or attach to these parts, almost like a virus. After one of these inner children, sub-personalities or parts get burdened that way, their whole organization, modus operandi, is based in that extreme belief or emotion. So they just take on that. It's not necessarily they are anger, but they are a personality that takes on the anger role. And they are entrenched in anger. They are angry for a reason. And the key is to understand why and give them compassion. After one of these inner children, sub-personalities, gets burdened that way, their whole organization, modus operandi, is based in extreme belief or emotion. 10 years or even decades later, after laying dormant, they have the power to overwhelm us. This is known as being triggered, obviously. Suddenly it's like that inner child or part of you is being poked, and they feel like they have to fight back. And this can happen extremely fast, in a nanosecond. These emotions are powerful and they can overwhelm us. Happens in a nanosecond. We revert to being that inner child. And if you were to even ask these parts how old you are, a lot of the time they will immediately reply 7, 5, 6. You can get them as young as 2 or 3. And it's those parts of you that are stuck, frozen in time, that are protecting that small child. They will make it so that we really struggle to function. So they can just completely take over. Once these parts take over, these protector parts, or these parts that are protecting the exile part of you, which we'll go into, you are now that part, and there's not much you can do. unless you know about this, right? You can see when someone's triggered, it's very difficult for them to change in that emotion. They become somebody else. Most of us, after being traumatized, will lock these parts of our away into inner dungeons. And then we navigate our lives, tread on eggshells carefully, not to do anything that might upset or trigger them. That's why you have guys that are people pleasers. These are people that you play these roles and you feel like you have to be this person. Otherwise, you don't want to ever have that part of you, the part that's locked away, the vulnerable child part. You never want to get that exposed. So you're just constantly managing the world. You're constantly managing relationships, and you are just doing everything you can not to be triggered. You're just doing everything you can because you just cannot trust that you can handle it. And it's the vulnerable part of you that you're protecting. And it's the parts that are doing that, protectors and managers, which we'll go into. These parts are known as exiles, as inside they are exiles. They are locked away or outcasted, not to be felt, without realizing that their precious qualities get lost in the process. So the fun, playful, curious side of you gets locked away. You are no longer open. You have this fearful look in your eye. You can see this in everybody. You can see this to some extent, how closed people are. They don't want to have that open connection because that part of them, they're got hurt. It got exiled. And now this part of their psyche, these parts, these personalities are literally just there to protect. You become dominated by another set of parts who are desperately trying to keep these exiles from being hurt or triggered. These parts are known as are called protectors or managers. Some protectors are trying to manage your life so that nothing happens that may trigger your exile. And then I'll go into this in the next video, but here's a quick overview. We have 3 types. So we've got the managers, firefighters, and exiles. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then obviously the self, but we'll talk about that in the next video. Okay, let's keep going. Good stuff.